The World's Most Uncelebrated Holiday by S. Brian Samuel. And just a little background on S. Brian Samuel. He spent 20 years with the World Bank, primarily working on the Caribbean Project Development Facility. An American university professor, upon leaving the office on Friday evening and remembering that the following day was a national holiday, cast a parting remark to his Grenadian colleagues. "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone." He later described their reaction. "My God, they all just glared at me and nobody said a word. Talk about non-reaction." That's what you get in Grenada when you bring up the subject of October 25th, 1983. People don't want to talk about it, especially to foreigners. It is not an episode that Grenadians of a certain age want to remember, let alone celebrate. However, October 19th is a different matter altogether. The tragic events of that day are seared into Grenadians' national consciousness, a cataclysm that shook Grenada to its foundations. For the few who don't know, just 6 days prior to the U.S. intervention, invasion, rescue mission, call it what you will, Grenada's 4-year experiment in revolutionary socialism came to a sickening, bloody end. At the end of that tragic day, the country's hugely popular, if unelected Prime Minister Maurice Bishop and a still unknown number of his followers were brutally gunned down by their former comrades in the People's Revolutionary Army. The Revo had devoured its own. For good, bad or evil, October 19th, 1983 is a day that Grenadians will never forget. It was our darkest hour, certainly within living memory. So no one was particularly surprised when America invaded Grenada just before dawn on October 25th, 1983. The only surprise was the speed with which it happened. This was a result of a happy coincidence. An amphibious task force just happened en route from North Carolina to Lebanon when they got a call to head south and clean up a little trouble in a place called Grenada. Where's that? They really did only have tourist maps, and the combat stories depicted in Heartbreak Ridge, Clint Eastwood's low-key movie about Operation Urgent Fury, really did happen. As an aside, who in the US military comes up with those corny Dr. Strangelove era secret code names? Urgent Fury, Shock and Awe. What next? Of course the inevitable happened. Goliath won. Not as quickly or painlessly as Big G would have liked, but when they did. And indeed Grenada was the poster child for the grateful natives. We couldn't shower our American liberators with more genuine kindness and gratitude than we did. Thank you, Reagan. Murals spontaneously appeared on walls. Bemused American GIs accepted the gushing appreciation of an entire nation, young and old, male and female. Mind you, by the time the liberators had landed, the entire nation, collectively and individually, was still reeling from the emotional trauma of the past 6 days. If Martian soldiers had landed that morning, they would have been feted as conquering heroes, and Grenada would now have a lot of half-Martians walking around today. On that first Thanksgiving Day, which the American soldiers were celebrating, people of Grenada spontaneously warmed to the idea and in a touching display of appreciation, showered the soldiers with a Grenadian version of Thanksgiving dinner in villages and beaches throughout the island. Our local leaders latched on to a good thing, declared that henceforth October 25th would be celebrated as Thanksgiving Day, essentially saying, "Thanks America for freeing us." Fast forward 31 years, and what do we have? This most moribund of holidays, a speech here and there, bored politicians trotting out well-worn phrases. Basically, it's just another day off. Really, isn't it about time that we did away with this fawning foolishness? Judging by the lack of a reaction or any kind of connection that this holiday has with the masses, one really has to say, this is a meaningless holiday. Hey, we all like another day off. But if we want to have a holiday with meaning, how about we just move the date up just a little to October 19th? And how about we change the name to something like Remembrance Day? Something that means something. For good or bad, 19th October is a date that is loaded with Grenadian historical significance, and it strikes me that this would be a more appreciated day for some national reflection and soul-searching than on the day the invasion came. When a still unknown number of Grenadians and Cubans died, when an almost unknown number of mental patients died when they were bombed by mistake, is that something to celebrate? Instead, let us remember and reflect upon the chain of events that got us to that sad state of affairs in the first place, and reaffirm that such a tragedy will never be repeated in Grenada, that we will never again put dogma before life. The foregoing, the world's most uncelebrated holiday, was submitted by S. Brian Samuel, a man who spent 20 years with the World Bank, primarily working on the Caribbean Project Development Facility. It's only fitting for me to have my say to compliment Brian Samuel's brilliantly put together piece some years ago. A people who do not know their history are bound to repeat it. Oh, how regretful we ought to be because of the lost opportunity to establish a truly new brand of democracy suited to our landscape and culture. One that similar nations to ours could well have emulated, thus making the entire region a collectively stronger force to be reckoned with on the international stage. The People's Revolutionary Government of Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord knew that for our nation to prosper, education and health care had to be priorities. They also knew that the productive sector through agriculture must be pivotal to help sustain our economy. Since the crash of the revolution on 19th October 1983 and the reversal of its progression as heralded by the American intervention of October 25th, 1983, Grenada has become a prostitute, opening up itself to be raped and pillaged by visionless leaders whose lack of focus proved effective for the demotion of our civilization to the bouncing low quadrant of life that we seem so effortlessly enjoying today. When this day comes around every year since 1983, Grenadians are glad for yet another day off, as that's all it is to many of them. The significance of the day is never observed in the strictest sense of the word by this youthful nation, over 60% of whom were born after the fact. This in itself tells one of the priorities of all governments of the post-revolutionary period. No effort has been made to sensitize the nation to their rich history, ignoring the fact that a people who do not know their history are bound to repeat it. Interestingly, most to all of the allegations leveled against the then sitting Prime Minister Sir Eric Gairy to justify the Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord-led March 13, 1979 revolution have become true to the longest-serving post-independence and revolutionary administration. And not only is nothing done about them, but leading citizens could be seen supporting all the intransigencies. This cannot end well when one thinks of how real ignorance contributes to the repetition of unwelcomed historic events. When the revolutionary leadership absorbed itself in a climaxing event which saw the execution of Maurice Bishop and some of his close cabinet allies and other friends, 6 days later the United States government, on the invitation of the sub-regional heads led by Tom Adams of Barbados and Eugenia Charles of Dominica, staged a military intervention to bring back stability to Grenada and the region. Grenada would never be on a similar path to progress after that, as the vision of succeeding administrations under Westminster-style democracy proved opportunistic and vacuous. The results are clear today. Since our healthcare is in shambles, education at an all-time low, with students graduating from schools not being able to read and write properly, and our food security has almost disappeared with absolutely no attention paid to agriculture. It is now 38 years and continuing since the US-led military intervention, and this day is regarded as Thanksgiving Day, but probably the world's most uncelebrated Thanksgiving holiday. No wonder.